Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. BC here, coming in with another episode of Oddcast, the podcast. Today, I have the honor of sitting down with a very close friend of mine for whom I can honestly say I would not be where I am doing what I'm doing, and a world empowered would not be where it's at doing what it's doing, impacting the lives that it's impacting if it not be for her. Linda Akey has been a great friend of mine for what, going on 20 years now?
Something like that.
I knew her back when I owned and ran my furniture company. She was a great client and customer of mine, and we developed a friendship. But Linda Akey owns and founded Competent Assistance for Nonprofits, or CANDO. CANDO specializes in helping nonprofits get started and existing nonprofits operate better. Linda has been involved in nonprofits her entire life, and her career she has helped hundreds of nonprofits realize their passion. Linda is also extremely active in all of her communities. While she was living in Colorado, she served on numerous boards of directors, served on the City of Loveland Community Marketing Commission as a chairperson. Currently, Linda lives in Seattle, Washington, where she serves as a vice chair of Burien Business and Economic Development Partnership. She is a board member of the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Discover Burien. And among other accolades, Linda was a 2012 Colorado Women of Influence honoree. Linda, my dear friend, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation with me. And I am so excited for the opportunity to blast out to the world what you do, how you've helped me, and how you help all of the other nonprofits that you work with. Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure. I'm so glad that you invited me to join this podcast, and I'm happy to share my experiences and kind of what I've been doing over the last, lifetime or 15, 20 years. I've been in business now for 14 years professionally, but I've been doing this a little bit longer than that. So
Well,
it's
thank you
great.
for taking the time. And again, I'm really excited to share you as a resource because I know a lot of people out there today, they see the problems that are going on in the world. They see the problems that are going on in their communities, and they want to make a difference. They want to find a way to make an impact, to have a positive impact in their world. And they just don't know how. They don't know where to begin. And it's a really time consuming and arduous process. And to have somebody like you on their team is unbelievable. So let's give our listeners just a little bit of background. Let's share with them where you came from, what you do. Let's start with where you came from and how you ended up with CANDO and helping the nonprofits.
Um, well, I grew up in Lakewood, Colorado. I went to Green Mountain High School, and I grew up in a family. They worked for the government. My dad worked for the United States Department of Agriculture, and my mom was a teacher. And they didn't have a lot of money, but they believed in philanthropic volunteerism. So what that means to me and what it meant to my family was that we volunteered within our community. We gave money where we could, but really it was more about activity within the community. And this gave me my first real introduction to nonprofit organizations, whether that was at our Catholic church or with the community theater that I was a part of, or the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the PTAs and the PTOs and the booster clubs and all of those kind of things that we were doing within our community to help make our community better. And that really stuck with me throughout my life. I served on my first board of directors when I was 12 years old with the Adult Children's Theater. And it really kind of gave me this interest in the work that nonprofit organizations do and how impactful that is. It was very impactful for me growing up, and being in a community theater really helped me to be able to be out in the public and things like that. So when I went to college, I wanted to study something so that I could be working in either nonprofits or government agency work. And at the time that I was in college, I went to Metro State. I was working full-time with the Wildwood Child Care Food Program. I'm sorry, well, almost full-time. And I was going to school full-time. And I really, really enjoyed working with that nonprofit organization. And I studied sociology and public administration because they didn't have nonprofit management degrees back in the early 90s. So, so that kind of helped me get started there. But after I graduated, I wasn't really able to support myself working in nonprofits. So I went to the telecommunications industry, where I learned a lot of different skills on project management, growth and development, sales, those kind of things. And then I got laid off in the dot-com bust of 2001 and 2. And I went to the banking industry. Banking industry gave me a wonderful insight on budgeting, on managing businesses, small businesses, and things like that. Now, this entire time, I was still volunteering with nonprofits, still working with nonprofits on a variety of different levels. But in 2005, I was approached by 2 fledgling nonprofits, one for a company I was working for in the banking industry in Northern Colorado, and the McDonald Family Charity. And then the other was the Loveland Opera Theater. And I was on the founding board, and I decided to volunteer to write their 1023 applications, which is the application for nonprofit organizations to get their tax exempt status.
You volunteered to do this?
I did for 2 separate nonprofits at the same time.
Anybody who hasn't written the 1023 or gone through that process, you have no idea just how arduous that is. How many pages is the long form 1023?
It's about 40 pages with 100 pages of technical IRS instructions. There's a publication 557, there's the form 1023 instructions, and then there's a whole bunch of other like documentation that you can look up and read through. And that you want to know.
Say it's extremely intense, and it takes a special kind of person to volunteer to do that for anybody. And yeah, so that just kind of gives people a little bit of insight as to who you are.
Yeah. Well,
keep going. I'm sorry to digress.
Attorneys hate doing it because they don't like doing budgets, and accountants hate doing it because they don't like doing the narrative where they have to write down everything about the nonprofit. And so I fill in for both of those. I'm not an attorney and I'm not an accountant, but I do specialize in this document. I also do the Form 1024 for all the other tax statuses. So I just really like doing the business side of starting up a nonprofit. And I enjoy being able to help nonprofit organizations figure out this entire morass that they have to do, this entire journey that they have to take in order to start up a business. And it is starting a business. It's just a nonprofit corporation, not a for-profit corporation. So I did this for those.
Kind of derailed you. So let's go back to you volunteering for the opera and volunteering to write their 1023s, and how you ended up deciding that this is what you wanted to do, and this was your life's calling and your dream to help empower other nonprofits. How did you end up there?
Well, the attorney and accountant that were advising me on these 2 applications, after we finished, we got approved really quickly on both organizations. And they had been advising me during the process, and the attorney came to me and he said, "Hey, would you like to quit your job and do this full time?" And I said, "Yeah, I would, but will they pay me?" And he gave me my first clients. That was John Mark Patterson out in Loveland, Colorado. And that's how I started. Like, I started by someone coming to me and saying, "I think you should do this." And me taking a huge leap of faith that I might be able to actually make a living doing it. Because, you know, what nonprofits are going to pay for that? But it turns out nonprofits really do want and need the help. So that's how my business started. It was just a suggestion, and I took someone up on it, and I made a huge leap to be able to do that.
So can you tell me what the feeling was like when you got that IRS letter of confirmation for the first organization, and what it felt like in your heart to realize that you were helping nonprofits on a journey to actually making a difference in the community?
I was ecstatic. I was so thrilled for both of the nonprofits that I had volunteered for to get their letters. But then for my first client, which was a very complicated application, to be honest, the first one that I did as part of my business was very complicated. It was an incubator, and there are certain other rules. So I was learning as I was going, and I was so thrilled when they came back with an approval of that. And so every single time that a client receives their determination letter, which is the final letter that they get that says you are a 501c3 nonprofit, I am ecstatic. I'm ecstatic for them. And I know that they're on the right path after having worked with me, because what I do for these nonprofits, it's not just check marking boxes on a form. It's actually setting up a 3 to 4 year strategic plan for their organization. I provide them bylaws and policies. I meet with their board. I help them identify all of their different programs and fundraising activities, and I help them develop them. I help them think about what fundraising they need to do and how they're going to pay for the operation and programming expenses, with the different kind of funding sources that they need. There's a lot of different funding sources, not just fundraising activities or events, but other ways to fund nonprofits. And so those are all things that I work through with organizations. Organizations will have questions about their website, their social media, their marketing, their volunteer program. And I help them with all of those pieces so that by the time that they get their determination letter, they've got a really good footing on what they should be doing. And that's what thrills me the most, because I know once they get that determination letter, they can hit the ground.
Plus, you've set them up on a solid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
You're not building a sand castle.
Yeah, that's my goal. And that's what's different about me than about there's online places like LegalZoom that you can go to get your 501c3, but they aren't as personalized. They don't do what I do, which I help nonprofits form their new nonprofit on every level, every piece of their nonprofit. And I'm here for them for later things that they need, so I'm always here for them. They work with a person, and that is a lot different than some of the online services.
Yeah, I mean, the 1023 itself can be extremely daunting and overwhelming for somebody starting out. But coming from somebody, I mean, I ran Colorado Lifestyle Furniture for 15 years, and there is a huge difference between running a brick and mortar for-profit business, and it's so much harder to satisfy and jump through all the loopholes and to make sure that you're setting up your nonprofit in a way that it can succeed, and how to work with a board and how to solicit donations. It's so much different than running a normal business, and having somebody like you is really invaluable, because there are so many landmines and pitfalls and places to stumble that if you didn't have that kind of advice and that person in your ear saying, hey, you need to try this, you need to be aware of this, if you want to do this, then you should think of this. And we don't know what we don't know, and if you don't have that kind of guidance, like somebody like you, it can be really dangerous and really overwhelming.
Yeah, what you don't know about the application can hurt you if you answer it wrong. I help organizations meet IRS and state laws and nonprofit industry standards and guidelines, and I'm providing a lot of different information on so many aspects of running a nonprofit. And I have had people come to me that say, I have my own business, I have a for-profit, I've been doing that, it shouldn't be that hard for me to transition. And they're quite surprised with all of the different rules that nonprofits have versus for-profits. And that's the big thing. Yeah, it's like I can run a business.
I
And
know how to run a business. I've been doing it for 2 decades. How hard could it be?
yeah, but that entrepreneurship, that entrepreneur mentality is actually very important for nonprofit founders to have. Founders of a nonprofit organization need to have that kind of entrepreneurial skills when they're doing it, because they're having to go after so many different things. They can be running their nonprofit while they're filling out the application, and they can be raising certain kinds of funds while they're filling out the application. And so they're doing these very different kinds of things, where you're running the business side and you're running the programmatic side of the organization. So it's a really good first initial step in being able to run a nonprofit and what you need to know and do. It's not an easy thing to run a nonprofit.
Well, having the entrepreneurial mindset definitely helps. There's a lot of overlap there, but
Mm-hmm.
again, the technical side of how the organization is run is much different. And when you have employees and you're writing their paycheck and you can tell them to take a hike if they don't do a good job, versus working for a board where they basically own and run the organization, and the organization is a part of the community, and your job as a nonprofit is to serve the community, not the other way
Mm-hmm.
around. It's a different mindset. So there's a lot of overlap. You have to, as an entrepreneur, be willing to put in the 40, 60, 80 hours a week without a paycheck. But the technical side of how to run it is much different. How did you know in those early days, in those early years, that your dream and your life's purpose was to help other nonprofits get started?
I don't know exactly where it happened, but I knew when I started college in the late 1980s, early 90s. When I started college, I knew that I wanted to continue to impact the community and that I would love to do that. And I had a choice too. Like, I was also a singer and a musician, and I was when I was 18, I was supposed to go on audition for Juilliard, and I did not go. I didn't leave Colorado for New York and go and do that audition. And I think there's, a reason for that. I stayed back and I ended up getting into college for this nonprofit work. And I just knew even back then, but I couldn't realize that dream until I gained some additional skills in my life to be able to actually run my own business. And so I think really I just kind of stepped into it. I had worked for companies for so long and worked for other people that I thought, well, I just want to be able to take this leap. And I guess I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was. I just feel like my entire life was spent helping communities and helping people. And I've started hundreds of, I've helped hundreds of nonprofits. I've started over 150 nonprofits. And I know that every single one of those nonprofits that I've helped to start creates a ripple effect in the community and ultimately the world. And so when I think about all these organizations that are doing all of this work in the communities that they live in and they serve in, I am very overwhelmed with that thought. And I take a lot of great pride in being able to make sure that these nonprofits are able to do their work. So I guess I don't know. I just always knew that I wanted to help communities be better.
It's a really neat capacity that you're in, because you take, for example, the teach a man a fish versus give a man a fish
Mm-hmm.
philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even I, with the World Empowered and the grants that we write and the organizations that we're able to help, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing had it not been for somebody like you, and you helping us get to where we are, compounded by the other 150 plus organizations that you've started or whatever. The number of people that you've helped around the world because of your assistance and
Mm-hmm.
your guidance in organizing and helping the other nonprofits, the impact that you, Linda Akey, have had in the world is immeasurable. I can't measure the impact that I and A World Empowered have had. And you've done this 100 times over with 100 different nonprofits, each helping hundreds, if not thousands or more of people all around the globe. So first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your role in my life and your friendship and your patronage to my furniture business back then, and your guidance with helping me start A World Empowered and your belief in me. I remember you were at the Mojo event. You had your own booth at that, my very, very first paid speaking gig. And you're in
Yes.
the back of the audience, like, recite your poem. I want you to recite your poem. You've been such a huge influence on my life, a huge asset to me. I really sincerely mean I can never thank you enough for what you do.
Well, I remember the first time that I heard the poem, I was so amazed. I was so inspired. I was so deeply touched. And I was like, you have to get this in the world. And I kept telling you that as you were going through the process. And so when you did that first event, I was like, don't hold it back. Just say it. Just do it. And you have it memorized, which is amazing. And I just, I know that at that event and at every time that the poem is shared, that it impacts those people. And that's what I'm doing with my business too. I know that every time I sit down with another nonprofit, that I'm helping the world. And you have done that with the World Empowered and with your poem as well. And I think that, we've always shared that. I think we've always shared that. We also knew each other through Realities for Children out in Northern Colorado as well. And that organization is very well run. And the work that they do within their own community, so important. I also helped them get their 501c3 early on. And they continue to just do amazing work. And so whether it's within your tiny community or somewhere in the world, I'm helping nonprofits in Lebanon and Syria and Africa and Mexico and all over the world as well. And so every nonprofit is different as to who they're impacting and how they're impacting, and every single one of them is important. And what's important to me is that they're running correctly and they're following the rules and they know what those rules are. And as they continue to make decisions and move the organization forward, that they will continue to be successful, not just programmatically, but operationally, and hopefully with their fundraising and funding activities that they're doing as well. But yeah, thank you. And I've really enjoyed our friendship over the years, and I've been just as inspired by you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very curious because you have a really unique perspective in all of the interactions that you've gotten to have. What is one of the overlapping qualities or characteristics of the people that you know who start nonprofits? Because again, going back to our original premise, like, this is about empowering difference makers, right? There's so many people in the world that see so many challenges and so many opportunities for growth and so many things that we need to change. What would be one overlapping quality or characteristic you've seen in some of the people that you work with?
I really think it's passion. Every single person that I have met that has founded a nonprofit is passionate about their cause. And that passion gives them strength and perseverance and courage, and is that they can move forward with the goals that they have. I mean, they're so passionate about their cause that they just can't stop the momentum that they have to move it forward. And it's very inspiring. That doesn't mean that they know how to run a nonprofit, but they are willing to learn. They're willing to figure out what they need to do to make it happen. And the qualities, that are coming forward from that passion, like I said, the strength and the perseverance and the courage to take steps, their leadership skills within the community, all of these things are just coming from that ball of energy that they have for the passion of why they're doing what they're doing. And it's really phenomenal to me. It's every single founder that I've met that has that.
Yeah, I volunteer a lot. Like you said, we met through Realities for Children. There's a lot of organizations that I work with, like Grand Families Coalition and Realities for Children. I'll just speak to myself. I feel like I am fulfilling my life's purpose. I
Mm-hmm.
feel with the world empowered that I'm doing the thing that I was put here on this planet to do. And I have a sense that all nonprofit founders and executives, the people that do this with their life, feel the same way, that this is their life's mission. This is why they were brought to this planet at this time. Um, I'm curious, because not everybody has the time or the wherewithal to start their own nonprofit, right? Not everybody
Mm-hmm.
has a single focus and a project or a passion to help one particular group or demographic or cause. What advice would you have for somebody that wants to make a difference in the community and they want to impact the world in some tangible way, but they don't know how to get out there? They don't know what to do. What advice do you have for somebody that has a job and a family and doesn't want to start a nonprofit, but still wants to be active and do something to support?
Yeah, and I think my first answer to that is maybe the obvious of go volunteer. Find an organization in your community that you feel passionate about. I think volunteers need to be just as passionate as founders. And if you have that passion and desire for whatever that could be, it might be working with animals, it might be for autistic children, it might be for at-risk children, it might be for domestic violence. I mean, there's so many causes out there that you can find that and start to volunteer and join their board of directors. That's a great way to learn about the ins and outs of a particular organization. It can also help, like if you have thoughts about starting a nonprofit, it's a good idea to check out the existing organizations that would be similar to the work that you're doing and go volunteer with them, talk to their executive director, serve on their board. It's a really good first step to being able to kind of get out there and figure it out. And I think one of the things that I have found really important in my life, just for me personally, is for me to write my own philanthropic mission statement. Mm. So I think everybody should have that. And I also think that all businesses should have a philanthropic statement too. Who do I want to fund? Why do I want to fund them? Who do I want to volunteer for? Why do I want to volunteer for them? What is it that turns me on personally? I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse. I participated in theater that changed my life, in community theater. And I believe in economic development in communities to help those communities be able to grow and succeed, which is why I serve on the chamber and with city commissions. So those are values for me and the things that guide me in terms of what I want to support, because they impacted my life. And I want to be able to give back in that way of being able to support them, right? So I try and do that in each community that I'm in, finding, the organizations that I want to be a part of and be supportive of. And I really believe that we are a much better world, a much better community when we're actively involved in it, versus just kind of sitting at home, or which is important to have a good family life, and you want to have those balances. But I really feel strongly about strong communities, and I've always had that within my own life. So I think it's a really good exercise for people to sit down and think about why they support certain causes, and do they really want to support that cause? Sometimes you're just walking around and you're like, American Cancer Society, I'm going to do that. But why are you doing that? Is it only because somebody asked you to, or have you really thought about what impact you want to have? And how many nonprofits do you want to support? If you give $25 to 20 nonprofits, is that effective? Or if you give $1,000 to one nonprofit, is that more effective? So what do you really want to do? How much money do you have per year to give? How much time per year do you have to give? And really put a lot of thought into that. And I think for nonprofits, it's good to be able to have these conversations with your donors or with your volunteers. Why do you want to be involved with us? What is driving you to do that? Why do you want to give to us? What is it in your life that impacted you to want to choose us? And I think those are good conversations for nonprofits to have with volunteers and donors as well.
One of the things that I'm quickly realizing is how important it is for nonprofits to be okay with a little boastfulness, to be okay bragging. Like there's this psychological element where we feel guilty touting our own accomplishments, you know? And I'm wrapping my mind around the idea and understanding that particularly when you're running a nonprofit, it's incredibly important to be acceptant of sharing and bragging about the good that we're doing. The more that we do, and the more that we share that we do, the more people want to be involved with what we do. I've noticed that when we write a grant and we post about, hey, we just sent 7 kids from inner city Boston to a weekend long outdoor immersive experience, or we just wrote this grant to Africa Bags or Meals on Wheels or whatever, and people see that A World Empowered is actually doing something and we're actually making a difference and having an impact, and they want to be involved with what we're doing. We get more people joining our Patreon. We get more people bidding on our silent auctions. We get more people buying books or whatever by sharing what we're doing. And I think a lot of times nonprofits kind of operate in this little shell, in this little bubble, and they don't want to brag because, you know, we're about just doing good. We don't want to take a paycheck. We just want to do the good and leave our mark. And I think that it's really important to be willing and accepting to share the good that we're doing with a different mindset. Could you expand a little bit on the importance of that?
Yeah, and I see it all the time, especially with the new nonprofits I'm starting. They'll often be in a little tiny cocoon and they're like, well, we're only going to do $10,000 a year and it's all volunteer. You know, we only need 3 members on our board. We're just going to, you know, and we don't see us growing any really much more than that. We're just going to be here. But as time goes on, you have to be able to grow, because you'll stagnate if you stay inside the cocoon. The butterfly that stays in the cocoon ends up dying. That little caterpillar, right? Like that cocoon, if it stays like that for 10 years, you know, that it's supposed to decay. It's supposed to open. The caterpillar is supposed to come out. The butterfly is supposed to happen, right? And so although butterflies die pretty quickly, it may not be a great analogy. You want your nonprofit to continue to succeed. But the truth is that if you keep that to yourself, and if you are not vulnerable with yourself and the nonprofit, it is being vulnerable with the nonprofit, right? Especially when you're a founder of a nonprofit, it's like, oh my God, what if I put it out in the world and nobody wants to see it, nobody wants to hear it, and it's not accepted? But if you don't put it into the world, then you're not going to get the support that you need. And I am always amazed when I get calls back from nonprofits saying, oh my God, we got $100,000 this year and it's only our 3rd year. How did that happen? You know, and so it can happen, and it can happen really quickly for you, but you do have to get out into the world. And it's, you know, everybody talks about how scary it is to be individually vulnerable. But being vulnerable with your business, with your nonprofit, is even harder, you know? And so it is important for organizations to really make that transition. Your board should be out there talking about you. Your volunteers should be talking about you. Your donors should be excited to give to you. You should be giving feedback back to your donors and your grantors. You know, this is what we're doing. This is what we did, because they want to know that the money that they gave you created that success. Otherwise, why else would they give you the money? They're not giving you the money for it to just sit in a hole. They want it to be given out into the community to do your work. And they want to know, your donors want to know that that's what you did. And the community, they're like, hey, who is this nonprofit? What are they doing? I always thought it was funny. I lived in Fort Collins for, I would probably say, 10, 12 years before I knew that a nonprofit called No Barriers existed. Have you heard of No Barriers?
I think you may have mentioned them in
Yeah.
conversation to me once.
They're located in downtown Fort Collins on Howe Street. But anyway, they
Are they the ones that take amputees or disabled people on experiences?
Yeah, exactly. It was started by Eric Weinheimer, and he climbed Mount Everest, and he's blind. He's the first person to climb Mount Everest blind. And he also has he went down the Colorado River on a kayak blind, like doing it himself.
By himself.
Yeah.
Paddling
People
himself.
around him have paddling by himself. People around him have bells, and they ring the bell for which direction he should go. Whoa. It's crazy. So anyway, it helps disabled people be able to take their wheelchairs up mountains. They have volunteers that literally drag wheelchairs up mountains. They have people without any arms or legs that they're pulling up mountains. It's amazing. It's so inspiring. And I had no idea that it was located in my backyard, right? So really getting that word out to everybody. I mean, people around the world had heard of No Barriers, but really I didn't realize. And I would have wanted to know that even earlier, right? So doing those things within the community that you need to do to get out there and get known so that everybody knows who you are is really, really important. That's a key part of fundraising and being able to deliver your programming. Even if your programming is not in the community that you are founded in or working in, if you're, like a World Empowered is doing work around the world, people in your community also want to know what you're doing, and you want to expand that out to nationally or, wherever else you're going to be serving. So it's really important to be able to get that word out and tell everybody, this is what we do, this is who we are, and this is what we've accomplished.
What would you say would be a good recommendation on how to find great board members and great volunteers?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to give you my characteristics of board members. I have 3 of them, okay? They're the only 3 characteristics that I think you really need. I've talked about it before, but you need passionate board members. People who are as passionate about your cause as you are. You need good leaders, people who can attend board meetings and not dominate conversation, but also not sit as a wallflower. You shouldn't have a rubber stamping board, but you should have a board that is filled with people who have leadership skills. And they also can take those leadership skills out into the community. They should be representing the organization out in the community. People should know that they serve on that board. They should be able to go fundraise. They should be able to knock on grantors' doors or high-end funding donors or things like that. And finally, they should want to be the best board member possible. They should want to go out and learn how to be a board member. There's tons of stuff online. There's classes to go to. There's the local nonprofit association and things like that. So first I would try and identify, those characteristics of people that you know in your community that you can ask. Another way to find board, finding board members. Let's see, the nonprofit associations in most communities have board information. In Colorado, United Way and Metro Volunteers has board members that they can refer out. They actually have board classes training, and then they put them onto a list. Going to your churches or your other kinds of networks that you're in. So whether it's a business network that you're in, going to other nonprofits in the community, they may be getting rid of certain board members that need a new opportunity. So connecting and collaborating with other nonprofits. Oftentimes, we do this with funders, but you can do it with board members too. You can look and see who serves on other nonprofit boards. That's public information. So that's another way. But it really is a matter of being out in the community and talking to people about your nonprofit. And when you find someone, I also suggest that everybody carry with them a board letter of intent. It could also be a volunteer letter of intent. But I'd actually have a written piece of paper that you carry around in your car. And whenever you meet somebody who you think might be a good volunteer or a good board member, say, hey, could you fill this out? We're keeping a list of possible board members. I'd love to talk with you more about it, if that'd be okay. But I think you'd be really good. Would you mind filling this out for me? And keeping
That's a really good idea. You're going to have to send that to me.
Yeah. It's a board letter of intent. And the other cool thing about these lists of board members that you're going to compile is that, let's say that you have a 7-member board and you have a list of 10 people on your board list, and you're going to fill those slots. Well, now it's a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, we would love to have you on our board. Right now, we're good on our board, but we have this strong interest in our board, and we really would love to have you on it. Can we put you on our wait list for now? And we'll call you as soon as we get a position open. It adds excitement to the organization. People are like, ooh, this is a tough board to get onto. Also, if you're going to expand your board from 7 to 9 members, it gives an opportunity for being like, oh, these are on our list. This is who I need to talk to next. So I would really encourage people to be keeping that information on hand.
That's a super great idea. Plus, it's got to really energize the current board. Nobody wants to get off a fast moving train. And if a board member has a seat, they're like, I'm not giving up my seat. I know there's a waiting line. I know there's a waiting list of 5 people that can't wait to get on this board. I don't want to give up my seat. So that's a really great idea.
Yeah, it does energize the existing board. And a lot of boards also have, they do their own self-evaluations, so they have duties of their boards, and things like that. And that also keeps your board energized. So really the other thing is, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, boards are boring. Like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to come for an hour and a half once every few months and sit down with these other people and kind of whatever. I'll just say yes to everything. And then and it sounds pretty boring. But if you've got an organization that is really involving your board in meeting donors, in being active in the community, in attending events, doing the things that board members really like to do, and in the strategic planning process, things like that, people are then like, oh, this is exciting. This is fun, So I think that's cool too. The word can get around that you have a fun board that people like to be on, and it's exciting. That word gets around. So when you do have a board member either term out, which board members definitely should term out, and you're ready for that, or if someone had to move or something like that, that these next people will be just as excited and passionate to be on your board.
So I'm going to thank you for that. That's really great advice. I'm going to shift directions a little bit and take it a little bit more personal. In your life, Linda, what has been the single greatest lesson that you've learned in regard to success and following your dreams?
I've had a lot of challenges in my life. And so the most important lesson, and the one thing that's really driving me right now, I think, and has over all of the years of my life, which there's been so many different things that have happened in my life. The word for me is perseverance. I think that I have this inner perseverance thing that drives me to move forward all the time. And it keeps me going even in the darkest moments. It allows me also to be able to have grace for myself, to step back and do my self-care, but also to take that next step. Like, in the morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to put on clothes today. And, sometimes it's just one little step. And that to me also describes the perseverance that it can take. Life is hard, and life throws so many different hurdles your way, that you just have to each day be able to say, what can I do today for myself to make it better for me today? What can I do? And I don't know. That's my big word right now, is perseverance.
No, I love it. I think it was Theodore Roosevelt once said, perseverance has a magical effect before which obstacles disappear and difficulties vanish.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think that perseverance comes from in you? And how do people help cultivate that within themselves? Where does that perseverance come from?
I believe that it's intrinsic. I believe that it's inside of who you are. And I believe that it can be developed, but I have always been intrinsically motivated. So I didn't have to have these external forces telling me to do something or be something. I had it inside of me to drive to do that. And I do it in my business every day. And I do it in the volunteer work that I do. And I do it in my relationship, that I just, every day I'm like, what can I do better today? And I'm intrinsically motivated to do that. I think that it definitely helped that I had a type A personality father. It was definitely like a workaholic who taught me how to do that, like this really, really strong work ethic that I grew up with. I don't know exactly how to teach those things, but my father is definitely somebody who, even at 83, is still moving and working and doing all the time. Like, he just doesn't stop. And that was a good role model for me when I was growing up. But I think that it also has to be something within you, which again is why I think that people need to follow their passion. If you find your passion, and you're loving what you're doing every day that you wake up, you may not love it every day, but you have that passion that's driving you, and then you've got the perseverance behind it to keep you moving even when the days are hard. It really does make your life good. I have an amazing, wonderful life, and I'm so grateful and thankful for that. But it doesn't mean that it was an easy life. It's been a hard life, and things in life are hard. And so you just have to, within yourself, believe in yourself, move yourself forward, no matter what other people are saying or other events that are happening or anything like that in your sphere of the world. You still have to trust and believe in yourself and keep moving forward. And that passion, I think, is what drives you. So find your passion, like truly find that thing that you love. And it takes time. It took me time to find that. And I took a circuitous route to that. But I found it. Like I knew I always wanted to work in nonprofits or government agency work. I do both now, one on a volunteer basis and one as a profession. And it's all come together. And I had to do other things, other steps in my life, like working in telecom and working in banking to get there, right? But you can always do the next step. And I think that is really what can help people be able to find that within themselves. I don't think you can be intrinsically motivated if you're not passionate about what you're doing.
This is true. And when you feel like what you're doing is an expression of your soul's purpose, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to stop. Like, this is what I meant to do. So
Yeah.
if something gets in my way, I'm like an ant. I'm going to go up, over, around. I'm going to pick it up and move it, or I'm going to find another way. But when you feel like what you're doing
Yeah.
is part of your soul's purpose on this planet, there's nothing that's going to stop you. You're going to keep going, even beyond the setbacks, beyond the difficulties. And again, it's not so much about the extrinsic motivation. It's not so much about the accolades, but it's about knowing that what you're doing is making a difference. And this is why you're here on this earth at this time.
Mm-hmm. And I do believe that everybody has a purpose, and I do believe that everybody has something to give. And it shouldn't be, oh, somebody told me I should do this or this, but it should be within yourself. Like, this is what I know in my heart, in my soul, in every part of my being, that this is what I should be doing. And I do know that I've been doing my work professionally. I've been in business for almost 14 years now, and it went by fast. It's the longest that I've ever held a single job for. Is I worked in all these other, like, 8 years with telecom, 6 years with banking, 6 years in the childcare industry, and 14 years owning my own business, helping nonprofits, is the one thing that I just know every day when I wake up, oh my gosh, I'm doing something important for somebody today. I just know I am. And as tired as I might be or whatever else is going on in my life, I can focus on, hey, let me try and help this nonprofit be better today.
Well, I love what you said about the circuitous route to your soul's purpose, the circuitous route to living your mission, because it's not linear. It's not a straight line. We don't know when we're 15. We don't know when we're 25. We often don't know when we're 35 or 45. But I've always talked about, and I've always said that, like, our job is to flip over the pieces of the puzzle so we can get a clearer picture of what it's supposed to be. And then our job is to figure out how those pieces fit together. When I was 23, I bought Colorado Lifestyle Furniture. And at that time, I felt in my heart of hearts that that was my soul's mission, that that was what I was meant to be doing.
And you were very good at it.
Thank you. And at that point in my life, that was what I was meant to be doing. I was living my soul's mission, my soul's purpose for that period, and being okay with not knowing the outcome, to not being okay with not knowing the direct trajectory of where we're supposed to be. Because had I not had that experience, I wouldn't have had 15 years of business experience. I wouldn't have met you.
Yeah. If I would have gone to New York to be on Broadway, I wouldn't have met you either.
Exactly.
But I don't know if I would have made it to Broadway, to be quite honest. I'm not sure I was actually that good. Maybe I was. And maybe in a different life or world.
I've heard you play piano, and I've listened to you sing, and I have every confidence that you could have if that's the route you chose. But you wouldn't have had the same impact that you're having now. That's for sure.
I think I agree with you. I think, we all have specific talents and things, and there's certain times and certain places. I'm watching American Idol right now, and all these young, they range in age from like 14 to 28, I think, or something like that. And they're young and they're looking for what they really want to do, and that might be their life purpose. Like, they may end up finding it. They might be the next Carrie Underwood, and find that purpose, or it might be something else. I mean, I know of, I'm trying to think of who it was, a famous actress recently just was like, I'm not doing acting anymore. I'm going to go do this because this is who I am now. And, life changes, and life changes bring you to different purposes for what you want to do. My life was completely altered. Actually, 1 week ago today, I celebrated my 31st rebirth day. 31 years since my car accident and surviving that accident. Well, that accident changed my life in so many different ways. And it wasn't something that you could have predicted. And it's altered my life in good ways and in bad ways. And it was a really good experience in the end. But I have physical things that I deal with and things like that, but it doesn't stop me from continuing to do this other mission that I have, this other purpose that I have in helping these nonprofits. So yeah, I mean, everybody has their story. Everybody has their challenge. Everybody has these hurdles that are put up in front of them that they can either jump over, go under, move around them, or move the hurdle itself. Whatever that solution is, that that you have that ability to be able to do that. And everybody has that ability regardless. It's one of the great things about No Barriers that I love to see is all of these different people with these differing abilities still doing things that they want to do in life regardless of what those um, uh, limitations might be for them. And the same happens even if you're fully able-bodied and you don't have any invisible or visible disabilities, that we all have something in our lives that hold us back and that prevent us from believing in ourselves and fulfilling the full mission of who we are and what we should be doing. And that's okay. It's all right. But you also have to be able to accept, like, this is who I am and this is what I do have to offer, and look at that half glass full versus that half glass empty, just to be able to, hey, I'm going to do this today because I know it's going to further what my purpose in the world is. And it takes time. And it's like you said, the path is not linear. It's not straightforward. And it goes on many different ways for every person. Everybody has their story. Everybody has their challenges in life. And everybody has a choice to make about how they want to move their life forward.
I think one of the most empowering mindset shifts that a person can make would be altering from if I can do something to how can I do something.
Mm-hmm.
To go from can I do this to how can I do this? And I think
Yeah.
that's what you're touching on, particularly with the No Barriers. It's not about, can I make it to the top of Mount Everest? It's how do I make it to the top of Mount Everest? And I
Yeah.
think all of us have the opportunity to reframe the way that we look at challenges and obstacles that appear in our life and approach it from that, how do I make this work?
Yeah. And the other thing that
Mentality.
I was really inspired by, they have something also in No Barriers called the rope team. And the truth is that he couldn't have gotten to the top of Mount Everest without other people helping him. And I couldn't do my work without other people helping me. And every nonprofit needs other people to help them. You don't found a nonprofit and run it all by yourself. You're not allowed to, but you can't. You have to have a rope team. You have to have people around you that are going to help you with this. And so learning to put yourself out there and say, hey, I've got this idea. I don't know. What do you think? And have people like, hey, I think that's a good idea. Being able to do that, being vulnerable personally, to be able to gather people around you that can help you do the things that you want to do, and trusting and believing in that, and I think vulnerability is one of the scariest things for people to have to deal with. It's a good thing, and it's scary. It's frightening to just go out there and say, okay, hey world, I want to do this and I need help.
I need help. Yeah, the ability to find, attract, and cultivate our support team. Because like you said, nobody can get there on their own.
Mm-mm. No, that's why we live in this community. That's why community is so important.
And it couldn't run without nonprofits and people like you. As we wrap up our wonderful conversation here, and before we jump on to the amazing live stream that we're going to do on Facebook here in a minute, do you have one final message of inspiration? If you could inoculate the society with one empowering bit of Linda wisdom, what would it be?
Gosh, I feel like I've said some of it already.
You've said a lot, and there's been an incredible amount of inspiration here. Is there one more message that you would like to share?
I think the big thing is just find your passion and take steps, even if it's one little step per day. Take that step to try and do something to move that forward so that you ultimately find your true purpose in this world.
I couldn't have said it better. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thank you so much for everything that you do to support me and all of the other nonprofits. Truly, what I said at the beginning, the impact that you have made on the world is immeasurable. And I thank you so much for being in my life. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to everybody soon. I hope everybody gets a chance to jump on the live stream here in a minute. We'll be starting there at 5:30. And thanks for tuning in to Oddcast, the podcast. Ciao.
Ciao.